Welcome to the tip channel. That is perfection. Today we're going to take a look at a cabinet construction that I will name a modified European cabinet. What do I mean by that? Basically, with the kitchen industry, what we're looking at is that there are typically two different types of construction. The American-made cabinet has always been made with a cabinet frame. So in our industry, we refer to it as a framed cabinet. The European does a frameless cabinet, meaning it does not have the cabinet frame on the front of the box. They'll switch to 3/4 inch thick material and make it frameless. So an interesting thing about the people in Europe is that they make their cabinets so that whenever they move, they take their cabinets with them. There's actually a hanger strip on the wall. They take their wall cabinets, hang them on the hanger strips, tighten them up. The cabinet bases are made on leveler legs, so they set them into place, level them up, and don't even screw them to the wall. Set the countertop on them, and then whenever they're ready to move, they unscrew everything, take the cabinets with them. Naturally, that doesn't happen in America. But the frame cabinet does require a lot of tooling. And what I'm talking about is that, as you can see, we're looking at a groove in the back of the cabinet, and that's naturally for our back panel. Then there's also a groove in the top, in the bottom, and grooves in the front to put the cabinet together. So our tops and bottoms slip into a groove, our back slips into a groove, and then our face frame is put together with a groove assembly. So a lot of tooling to create that. Whenever I build my utilities, I switch to this modified frameless cabinet. And what I'll do is a 3/4 inch box construction and then put a face frame on it. The main reason I wanted to show you this video is that if you have a small shop or you're thinking about building some cabinets yourself, this will take a lot less equipment to manufacture the cabinet. So this isn't going to make a whole lot of sense until we actually start to look at some of the parts that we're going to do. But I hope that this might help you to be able to build cabinets without a whole lot of tooling in your shop. So the first thing we need to do is we need to cut our tops, bottoms, and our sides for our modified cabinet. Now this is a sliding table saw. Now you don't have to have a slider. You can do this on a normal table saw. You may need a hand to get your sheets over to the saw and to help run them through it. I would suggest a table on the rear side of the saw to grab your product as you go through your fence. The next thing that I need to do is my side panels. I need to make a toe kick notch in it. Now you can also do what's called a removable toe kick, make your toe kick separate, and then you don't have to worry about doing this notch. The process that we're going to do is that we're using maple plywood, maple on both sides, and then we will apply a oak skin to the exterior, which you'll see that in the latter part of the video. Now what that means is this. We don't need to worry about an overcut on the outside of the cabinet because that's going to be covered up with a skin. This is what I was trying to explain about the toe kick. Now, this is the outside of our cabinet, and we have the overcut on both sides. So whenever I cut this, this was actually down on my saw. So my inside of my cabinet is perfect, but my outside has an overcut on it. So we're going to apply a skin on top of this, so this skin, this does not matter. Now, I took a scrap piece to show you the other alternative. Now, if this was a finished side, my problem is that my one cut, I can overcut. Now, what I'm talking about is, see the overcut on the back side? Now, this is down in the toe kick area. The inside of my cabinet is going to be here, so you're never going to see this one. However, this other cut I've got to stop short, because if I went ahead and cut that on through, I would see it on the inside of the cabinet. So I don't want to see that. So I've stopped short, and then I'll cut this last little piece by hand. We have our tops and bottoms cut out and our toe kick notch. Now we're ready to actually put a groove in the tops and bottoms and sides for the back of the cabinet. Now, even with this modified construction, you're still going to need a groove for the back of the cabinet. Now, this saw I actually have set up running backwards, meaning instead of the saw blade turning towards me, it's turning away from me. Now, the reason that I can do that is that I have a feeder on here. Without a feeder, you would not be able to do that. What this helps is it minimizes the chipping by cutting backwards through the product. If you're using a normal table saw without a feeder, your blades will need to go in the correct direction. If not, it'll want to take your board and shoot it out. So what I have is I have my fence set at 3/4 of an inch from this side of the blade, which leaves approximately about a 1/2 inch on the back side. Now, I've got my Dadu's blade set up a little heavier than 1/4 of an inch. Just to clarify, the Dadu blades are set at about 5/16 of an inch wide and about 5/16 of an inch deep. This allows for heavier materials like melamine. The next process of the cabinet is to make these shells adjustable in the cabinet. So this machine is what's referred to as line boring. This one has 46 drill bits that come down all one time and drill 46 holes in the side of the cabinet. Now, they make this machine smaller. They make it with only one line of drill bits, and that would drill 23 holes. They also make smaller units which only do 10 or 12 holes. One other possibility is they do make little templates you can buy online, and they've got this spacing in it. You lay them down, position it, clamp it into place, and then drill them with a hand drill. Now, naturally, you will need to stop so you don't drill all the way through the side of the cabinet. Now, if you don't want to get all that technical, you can use what's referred to as KV, which is basically nap and vault. And they offer what's referred to as shelf clips and shelf standards. Now, the shelf standards basically come about 4 foot long. You cut them to size, and you actually take and screw them right to the side of the cabinet. And then there's a little clip that clips into it. I'll try to put that in the video so that you understand what I'm talking about. But a couple different options in regards to making the shelves adjustable. So we're going to go ahead now and drill the sides of our cabinets. Now, as you can see, we have the side of our cabinet drilled for our adjustable shelves, and basically our client will use a 5mm spoon shelf clip, if you will, and that will get placed right in the hole at whatever level they want the shelves, giving them. As you're cutting out the stiles and rails for your cabinets, if you're going to choose to use your power miter box to do that, couple of tips. Number one is 5mm pencil. That puts a very small mark on the board. After you mark your board, take your tape and check it. Do I need to leave the line? Do I need to take the line? Do I need to split the line? With cabinet building, it's very important to keep everything as precise as possible. After you make your cut, remeasure your board. You might be a 64th, maybe a 32nd heavy, and you can go ahead and take that off now. Or you may have made it too short and you need to start over. Now, before we start the assembly, I want to explain about a cabinet frame. Now, the vertical pieces on a cabinet is referred to as stiles, S-T-I-L-E-S. The horizontal pieces are referred to as rails. Now, if you have two cabinets butting together in the middle, that's just referred to as butt doors. If you have a cabinet that has a center stile, now this is where two doors would meet on top of a piece of wood. This center stile typically is going to run from the two rails. That keeps everything nice and strong. So Verticals, stiles, horizontal rails. This is referred to as a center stile. We'll be assembling our frame together with pocket holes. Now, what's a pocket hole? This is a Kreg Pocket Hole machine. What does it do? The pocket hole is on an angle, and it'll come out just about in the center of my next piece that we're going to screw together. Now, you don't have to purchase the Kreg Pocket Hole machine. This is a device that is made by Kreg as well, and I used it for years, no problem with it. Basically, it works the same way. You would take your workpiece, clamp it into place, and take your drill and drill down through. So it works just as well. But we'll be using pocket holes in order to assemble our frame. So we have everything prepared, and we're getting ready to assemble the frame. Now I have done 2 pocket holes in each of my rails, and we have 3 total, top, bottom, and then we have an intermediate. We'll be putting that together at each of the corner. Now, Kreg has a fancy bench top device that you can buy to actually hold everything together while you're screwing it. I'm in my 4th quarter. I don't think I'll be investing in that. But Kreg, if you're listening, I could YouTube that for you. Anyways, any good cabinet builder will tell you it is not the nails, it is not the staples, it is not the screws. What holds a cabinet together is the glue. So we glue up our end, we put it together, and this is a clamp made by Kreg. This is a screw gun bit made by Kreg, and these are 1¼ inch coarse Kreg screws. Now, the hole closest to the edge, 90% of the time you won't have an issue, but sometimes because of the grain of the wood, you could get a split out on your stile. So what I normally do is I take an 1/8 inch drill bit and just go ahead and pre-drill it to keep it from splitting. Release our clamp. Next thing you want to do, wipe the glue off. Now, 2 things. Number 1 is stain won't take the glue. So if you got any glue left on your product, it won't stain. Now, what you've also done right now is you've raised the grain on that. Now, we sanded everything beforehand, but because we just raised the grain, we're going to want to hit that one more time with the sander. If not, what will happen is the stain will take darker in this position. But as you can see, that made a nice tight joint. Once that glue sets up, that frame's not going anywhere. Our cabinet frame is together and it's drying. After it's dry, I'll hit it with a sander. Naturally, it needs to be stained and finished yet, which I will cover in another video. But while that's drying, what I'm going to do is go ahead and prep the cabinet so that I can put the cabinet box together. Now, first of all, we need to be able to attach the cabinet frame to the box. So what I have here is I have the top and bottom, and I have the intermediate. The intermediate's the piece that's going to go in here. What I will do is, first of all, let's just say this is the inside of my cabinet. See the groove? So I'm going to go on the outside of my piece. We'll pretend that this is the top of our cabinet, and I'll drill 3 pocket holes. So that's going to be up at the top. You're not going to see those screws. They are concealed. I'll do exactly the same thing with the bottom. I'll put the holes on the bottom. Again, you won't see those holes. Now, the intermediate, keeping in mind that the top of it will be just about even. I normally hold that down about 1/8, but the underside of that is in an area that's not high visibility. So I'll go ahead and drill the intermediate for 3 pocket screws. So will be attached here, will be attached here, will be attached down at the bottom. Now that's a big span in between, so we definitely need to have that attached as well. So what I will do is to do a pocket screw. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a skin, so I probably will do that pocket screw on this side so you don't see it. On the other side, we're going to pretend like this is either two-sided material or you're using oak plywood, so you don't need to do a skin. And what I'll do is I'll put that pocket screw on the inside of this panel about halfway down. That'll give us a good grab. Naturally, we'll be gluing the frame to the box. If we have the one in the center, which is actually showing, Kreg offers these, and they're a little piece of plastic that you can glue into place. They simply slide right into the glue slot, and when you get done, this is all you see. At this point, we have the cabinet box prepared to attach to the frame. As you can see, I did my 3 holes in my top and my bottom, and I went ahead and marked my top and bottom. I've got my interiors together, meaning my groove side, and I know that this is now going to be my right-hand side. Now, we're going to show you 2 different attachment methods. As I mentioned, we're going to do a skin on our finished side. We're going to pretend like this right side is a finished product, so that we don't want to have any screws exposed on that side. So what we're talking about is the right-hand side. We're talking about no screws shown. So I know that this is the front of my cabinet. This is my side where I don't want any screws shown. So I'll go ahead and do pocket hole screws there, pocket hole screws on the bottom of my cabinet. And then my intermediate, these are my holes here. So I'm going to flip it over so I know that this is my right-hand side. That's the side that I need to put a couple of pocket holes in to attach that side. It'll all make sense when it comes together. We have things prepared, and now we're ready to start the assembly of the box. Now, first of all, the position for the top, the bottom, and the intermediate. Never ever try to put 2 pieces of wood and hold them flush. It'll never work out. You'll either be up a little bit, down a little bit. The seam looks terrible. So what we want is that we want our top to be 1/8 of an inch up. Our bottom 1/8 of an inch down from the inside. The center intermediate, again, we want down 1/8 of an inch. So what we've done is that our stiles and rails on our cabinet is 1.5 inches. So to the inside of our board, we're using 3/4 material, would be 1 3/8 inches. Now, the top part of it would be 5/8. That puts the center of our board at 1 inch from the top. Now, down below, we've got a 4-inch toe kick, 1.5 inch stile. So inside would be 5.5. The bottom of the board would be 4 5/8. Center of the board would be 5. So we went ahead and drilled that for our assembly screws. And an assembly screw basically has a little cutter on the back side of the head. So as you bring it in, that little cutter will spin itself right down into the wood and recess it so it's out of the way. Now, you can put these together with drywall screws. If you do, you're probably going to want a bit like this. You can use a 3/8 drill bit, then use a countersink. This is a bit that basically drills and countersinks all at one time. So there's a little bit of a time saver for you, if you will. Now, I did fail to mention that our parts are finished. I would never ever expect you to put your head inside of a cabinet and spray it, although I have seen people do that. They no longer have any need for any hairspray or gel, I'll tell you that. Okay, so basically we're ready to assemble. What I've done is I've went ahead and put glue down into my groove for my back panel on both my top and bottom, and we're ready to screw these together. So what we're looking at doing, we bring this up on its side. Now, I have my mark on my inside. I get that lined up. And I know where my screw holes are is the center of my board. I'll go ahead and tack that with an 1¼ inch staple. And it just sort of holds it into place for me. And you can check it at this point. If you need to, and it needs to come down just a hair, you can take a mallet and adjust it very easily with just the staples in it. Sometimes a little more persuasion. Sometimes you just need a bigger hammer. And then we'll put the assembly screws in. Now this is the side that we're going to do a skin on, so it doesn't matter about staples and screws. So I've drilled 3 holes here, 3 holes for the intermediate, 3 holes for the bottom. We'll get that together and then I'll show you the other side. Now we're ready to attach the other side. And naturally I have the glue in the 1/4 inch groove for it. I've got the 1/4 inch back panel slid down into place. Now this is a side that we're pretending is a finished side and we don't want anything exposed. So we've set this up for the pocket screws. Now the Kreg screws will have a tendency to pull the product as it tightens up about a 32nd of an inch. So 2 things. Number 1 is you can take and compensate for that. What I prefer to do is to use a bar clamp. So I get it into place. I got my front nice and flush. I'm on my mark and I go ahead and stick my pipe clamp on. Now I'm ready to assemble. Now I'll go ahead and spin this table so you can see what I'm doing. I'm on my mark in the front, I'm in my mark on the back, and I'll go ahead and shoot my 2 pocket screws that I've laid out up here on the top to attach that side. Now naturally, they won't be seen. The next step of our cabinet assembly is that we need to square the cabinet. How do we square the cabinet? Basically what we're going to do is we're going to go from corner to corner, corner to corner. So this corner is measuring 91 3/16. This corner is measuring 91 1/4. So I know that I need to go about a 32nd of an inch up to be square. Yours might be a little worse than that, but you can tap it naturally to get it into place. And then what we'll do is we'll tack the 4 corners to hold us square. Now for that, basically we'll be using a stapler with a 1 inch 18 gauge staple, and we'll hold the stapler at an angle. Not at a steep angle, we don't want to shoot through the side, but at an angle so that we don't see the staple on the inside of the cabinet. So we'll get this cabinet squared and then we'll show you the rest. We have our top and bottom into place, and naturally we want to go ahead and do the intermediate next. We've got our pocket hole screws down so that, again, you would have to look underneath of the style to see those. So there's sort of a semi-concealed location. We'll go ahead and put the pipe clamp into place. We've got our mark. We'll go ahead and pocket screw it into place as well. Next up, we know that where our intermediate is at, our cabinet is correct. Where our top and bottom is, that is correct. This is a pretty big span between the two, so naturally the sides could be bowed in a little. They could be bowed out a little. So I checked it, and we were about a 32nd of an inch strong. So I pulled that in with the pipe clamp. I'll go ahead and staple that. I will then also staple through the back into my intermediate, and then we'll go around the entire cabinet about every 6 to 8 inches with the 1/4 inch staple and staple the back to the sides of the cabinet. We need to do one more thing to the back of the cabinet, and we want to add some screw strips. What we're talking about is this cabinet will probably be screwed up at the top. It might be screwed right at the intermediate. It might be screwed at the bottom. So we're reinforcing the back for screws to be able to attach it to the wall. This is just 1/2 inch plywood. We'll glue it and then we'll toe nail it into place with a 1/4 inch crown by 1/2 inch long staple. Basically, we'll just staple it along the edge. That'll give us some support for anchoring the cabinet. Our cabinet frame and our skin are finished now, and if you'd like to see that, I will be uploading a finished video as well. At this point, I've done a bead of glue all the way around my box, and I just used the Tight Bond that I can pick up at the local lumber yard. It's the yellow wood glue. Excuse me, I will be using pipe clamps to hold this into place as I'm screwing it down, and I will be putting a little wood blocker underneath of the pipe clamp so that I don't mar the finish. To recall, we've got 3 pocket screws here, we've got 3 Kreg pocket screws here, 3 down here, 2 here, and 1 over there. We will be applying a 1/4 inch skin. The 1/4 inch skin basically is going to make us what's referred to as a flush finished end. What that simply means is that typically frame cabinets have a 1/4 inch reveal. What that means is the cabinet frame is going to stick past the cabinet box 1/4 of an inch. When we apply the 1/4 inch skin, we end up with what's called a flush finish end. What really makes that nice is that if we're running crown molding, instead of having to notch out the style for the crown, we're able to return right down that side. So a nice clean look. So as I put my frame on, I will be checking, and I'll probably want about a 32nd of an inch reveal past the side of a 1/4 inch skin.
Now, as I've already mentioned, it's not the Kreg screws that is holding the cabinet frame to the box, it's the glue. The Kreg screws are merely there to hold the frame into place while the glue is setting up. Typical dry time of the yellow glue is about 20 minutes to a half an hour. I normally go an hour just to be on the safe side.
My distributor offers 3/4 inch maple plywood pre-finished. What that means is the clear coat is already on the maple. So reasonably priced, it's not worth my time and effort to finish it. So I did buy pre-finished for this cabinet. Now, my problem is that now I need to adhere my skin to the side of this. So I've taken my belt sander and I've roughed that up. Now she took a tack rag, wiped it down. Still, it's a little bit of a smooth surface. So the typical wood glue I might be able to get away with, but I don't want to take that chance. I could use contact adhesive, which is made for doing laminate countertops. My problem with that is that whenever I go to stick it, it's got to be perfect into place. Now, I've made my skin about 1/8 of an inch big all the way around, and then I'll actually router it into place. Now, I like the flexibility of being able to move that skin a little bit to get it exactly where I want it to be. So what I'm going to use is a product, and I cannot pronounce the name, I will spell it. It is made by HELMITIN, and it's a Hildebond 890.
Now, the finished product that I use takes approximately 4 to 6 hours before it becomes stackable. What that means is that it becomes very hard in a 4 to 6 hour time, so you don't want to clamp this product into place before that window is over. You don't want to take a chance of damaging the product.
The glue's dry, so let's go ahead and pull off the clamps, and we'll go ahead and router off the excess. I'm getting ready to run some toe kicks and shelves for the cabinetry, and I thought I would take a couple of minutes and explain edge banding. What is edge banding? Well, for my toe kick, I prefer 3/4 inch thick plywood, and actually my shelves are 3/4 inch thick plywood. Now, in the case of this kitchen we're running, it's oak, so I'll be doing an oak edge band. And on my shelves, they're maple, so I'll be doing a maple edge band. Now, this is an edge banding material. I normally buy this in 15/16 width. And the big green machine that you see behind me is an edge bander. Now, the edge bander, you take your shelf, you put it on the machine, you load your edge band in. This puts a hot melt glue on, routers it, trims it, all one shot. When it comes out the other end of the machine, you got to touch it with a file a little bit, clean it up, and it's done. Now, naturally, you don't have to go to the expense of an edge bander. You can, in fact, put this on by hand. Number one would be to use contact adhesive. Basically, you put the adhesive on the edge band. You put the adhesive on the edge of the material that you're using. You wait about 5 minutes till that dries to the touch, and then you stick it. Now, with contact adhesive, you got one shot, so put it down. It has to be in the right position, and then stick it. Also, they make this edge banding material in a glued. What that means is it has a hot melt glue already on the back side of it, so you can actually take a iron and iron the piece into place. And then naturally, once you have it on, you take your router off the excess, and then take a laminate file. Now, laminate file typically is going to have two different cutters. You're going to have a very coarse side and a very fine side. So naturally, for finish up, your fine side gives you a nice smooth edge on the product. Now, you can also buy sheets of veneer as well, and then you would use a slitter in order to cut the sheets. If we're talking about toe kick material, you can also naturally rip down a small piece of wood and cut it to about 1/8 of an inch thick and glue it to the edge of the toe kick. How to apply edge bands by hand. Now, what I use is Wilson Art, and I use the Wilson Art 500. This is made to be brushable. You can get product from them that's made to be sprayed through a spray gun. They also make air canisters that you can have with the glue in it. But I do like the Wilson Art product. This is coming from a supplier. It's not coming from a lumberyard. Now, first of all, container. You want something that has a good plastic in. Some of this will eat the thinner plastic, so you end up with a bowl that starts to disintegrate. So a little thicker plastic, naturally a throwaway brush. And what you want to do is go ahead and glue the edge band. And you want to glue the edge of the wood. Now, let me explain that the wood will have a tendency to suck up the glue. So what I normally do is I give it a coat, I let it dry for a little bit, and then I hit that a second coat. Now, we've got one here prepared. We're going to go ahead and show you how to stick this. Now, as I mentioned, you got one shot. So what you want to do is to align it and then press it into place. Now, you can just use your hands, but it is nice to have a J-roller. J-roller applies a lot of pressure. I also have T-rollers when I'm working with bigger pieces, but that applies a lot of pressure. Now, at this point, you can see that I've got overhang here, I've got overhang here, overhang here. So what I'll do next is I'll take my router and router off that excess. Now, a few things in regards to doing your edge banding. First of all, if you're using the contact adhesive, what you want is that you want to wait until the glue is dry to the point where you can touch it with your finger and it doesn't come off. That's about 5 minutes or so. After that, you've got about a half an hour to 45 minutes to actually get the piece stuck into place. Don't worry if it goes beyond that. Naturally, you can re-glue the product. Now, a couple of things. Number one is for cutting the edge bands, you can use a pair of scissors. You can use a paper cutter. If you're buying sheets of veneer to cover your sides of your cabinets, you can also use what's referred to as a slitter. Now, a slitter basically it has two cutter wheels, and then it has an adjustment piece so that you can adjust it for the width of the piece that you're looking at doing. Now we have our edge bands on our product, and what we're going to do is to router them off. I'm using a router bit with a bearing on it, and I've set the depth so I'm barely cutting through the edge band. Now, typically what I will do also, because you're looking at sort of trying to keep this straight on a very narrow piece, is I typically tip my router up just a little bit. So we'll go ahead and router that off. With the excess routed off, our next step is to use a file. Now, as I mentioned, you've got a coarse side, you've got a fine side. So I'll start out with the coarse, and I'll stay with the product. So in other words, first of all, you don't want to pull, you want to push. So we're going to push. I'm going to lay it flat on the surface, cut my excess off with that file, and then I'm going to switch to my smooth side. I'm going to go a little bit of an angle and just soften that corner off a little. Then hit my edges. Switch to the other side. Same thing. Now, at this point, you're going to have a little bit of excess glue, and you take a little bit of lacquer thinner and a rag, and you can clean that right up. After we have our edge bands on, we'll go ahead and sand this, and we're ready to stain it and finish it. The next step on our cabinet is to hinge our doors. Now, nobody likes seeing a hinge anymore, and everybody loves that cushion close mechanism now on hinges. What that means is that if your husband gets mad at you and he tries to slam a door, it's going to stop about 3 inches away from the cabinet, and then it's going to very softly close. Now, one of the best hinges in the market, and what I use, is a Blum hinge. Now, this is called a Blum compact hinge, and it comes in different overlays. What does overlays mean? Overlays mean how much the door overlaps the opening on your cabinet. I typically do a 1/2 inch overlap. Some people prefer a full overlay. Really is a matter of preference. When you bring it up to a customer, they really don't even know what you're talking about until you actually show them. But Blum Motion hinges, good quality hinge, these will be available in what's referred to as a knock-in or a screw-in. Knock-in means that it has this little plastic raw plug on the back side. Screw-in means that it'll just come with screws. So in our case, we're going to be using knock-in because my machine goes ahead and drills 3 holes. Now, as you can see, the Blum hinge boring machine drilled 3 holes, one for the hinge itself and 2 smaller holes for the knock-in hinge. Now, you don't have to buy an expensive machine like this. They're actually making pin plates nowadays that go on the door and drills just that big hole. So you would purchase the screw-in, which will come with normal screws. You drill just the 1 hole, and then you screw the hinge into place. That pretty much completes our cabinet with the exception of mounting our doors. Now, this is a little clumsy getting out to the job site, so I typically mount the doors out on the job site. And same thing with the toe kick, I'll apply it out at the job site. Now, I switched to this modified European construction for my utilities for one reason. This is a cabinet that a customer is probably going to jam-pack full of canned goods, so it would end up taking a lot of weight. With the 3/4 inch construction, not a problem. It's going to take it without an issue. Also, I chose to show you the construction of this cabinet because it's very simple. Takes minimal amount of tooling in order to do. Now, I just need to finish all the rest of these cabinets. What? You thought we were just going to build one cabinet? How'd the cabinet turn out? This is the tip channel. That is perfection. What? It ain't cocky if you back it up. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and have a wonderful day.